It is.
And that's what really bothers me is you have people, you meet them that say I care about people starving in the third world, but I'm going to go, I'm going to go be selfish and stuff my face with, this high intensity crop.
They may not be thinking they're being
Well,
selfish.
I know, and they don't know. They don't.
In our culture from our food.
Yeah,
right.
We're really
from our food
disconnected.
source.
Right, and we're disconnected.
You have a lot to say about that.
Yeah, you have a lot.
Well, in terms, it starts whenever you go to school. Like, you look at school lunches and just what they provide the kids. Like, all that's just processed, meat and other byproducts of grain. And the funny thing is I recently went to the Farm to School conference in Little Rock and just learned about the difficulties of local farmers trying to get healthy food into our schools because the schools don't have the money to pay for the products. They only have $1 to spend on each child for lunch and breakfast. And it's like, man, it just starts when you're young. Like, that whole process of being addicted to processed foods and sugars and meats, it starts when you're young. So
yeah, I have a real big problem with it because my daughter's in first grade. She's 7 years old, and I see some of the. I mean, I try to make her lunches most of the time, but she does eat some school lunches, and it saddens me that it seems like our children at schools are getting fed the lowest quality food available. I mean, we're not. It's the lowest standard that we're giving to our children as their brains and bodies develop. It's just unbelievable to me. And yet we can provide, massive funds to our, build bombs and drop bombs on people in other countries. It's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, so it's just crazy how we're encouraging that lifestyle, that habit from a young age. So,
yeah. That's part of that could have to do with, where our commercials are, too, on television. I mean, we have commercials targeted at children. They're essentially manipulating their minds. It's somewhat mind control in a way, and they're teaching children to desire things that are very unhealthy for them. These horrible, super sugary, candies and snacks and cereals and things that I mean, they're not good for their bodies at all. And then we have a whole billion-dollar industry targeted at children to, for them to nag. There's a term for it, nag factor. So they nag their parents to buy these junky foods to put in their mouths, and it's unbelievable to me. I mean,
but yeah.
So let's see. Well, there's one other thing I wanted to say before we kept moving on past the peak oil thing. This whistleblower that said that actually we may have reached peak oil, and this goes to the agriculture issue because our agriculture system's so based on oil at every stage. He said that we have already reached the peak oil zone, and I think the situation is really bad. And what's interesting is that people within the International Energy Agency were being pressured from American officials to distort the figures and to say that we're not going to reach peak oil for another decade or two. Which, even if we are going to reach the peak oil in another decade or two, that still doesn't. It's still. I mean, we're gonna. It's very soon.
Whether we're there now or whether we're going to be there in
it's
10
kind
to
of
20 years.
Yeah, and the thing is, to deal with peak oil, we're supposed to be addressing the problem 20 years in advance, and we're not doing that. Our government is completely incompetent, and they're really endangering our civilization and our nation and our world, and it's unbelievable to me.
We need to be creating mass policies that address the mass problems that you're talking about. Related to what climate change is going to be doing, and the migrations that are going to occur, and the degradation of our soils from climate change, and the droughts and the floods and all of that. I mean, we need to be really planning for all of that. And then the agribusiness and the way that most of us eat, maybe not all of us and maybe not us at this table, but is so intertwined with the petroleum industry. I mean, if you just start talking about fertilizer, just one component, it's really mind-boggling. And the American Farm Bureau has come out against climate change legislation, and I believe for that reason. The American Farm Bureau, because they represent agribusiness. They're not looking at the small farmers or the farmers that we know at our local farmers market.
Real quick, I'll jump in there on that statistic about peak oil. One of the things I got the pleasure to see about a week ago was a documentary, and people should watch this. It's called Crude Awakening. You can go look at it, Crude Awakening. And they have the CEO of ExxonMobil on there saying that all across the world, we've already hit peak oil. The only countries in the world that haven't hit peak oil yet?
In the Middle East.
In the Middle East.
Well, yeah.
In the Middle East, there's two of them. Saudi Arabia and surprise, Iraq.
Well, that's debatable. That figure is actually debatable too. There's reports that there's similar pressure in those countries to cover up the fact that most of those fields have already peaked too, and those are the largest, excluding those awful tar sands in Canada that BP is trying to exploit right now. Those are our largest recoverable reserves of oil in the world.
Yeah, I mean, well, OPEC, the oil cartel, incentivized these Middle Eastern countries to lie about their reserves. I mean, we have some of these oil-producing nations in the Middle East are reporting the same statistic over and over and over again, and they're incentivized to do that because the amount that they're allowed to sell, according to this supply control within the OPEC, is dependent upon the reported reserves. So they're encouraged to actually lie and distort their figures, and so we don't really know how much oil we have.
So our current economies and the value of things are actually based on falsehoods at this time.
Well, yeah, and certainly now previously the most respectable estimator of world energy supplies has completely lost its credibility now. We have multiple whistleblowers said that they have been pressured by American officials to distort these figures.
To make it seem like we have a lot more oil than we really do.
Because they're afraid there'll be a panic and people will try to buy up all the oil. That'll drive up the price, and it'll be problematic, and it certainly will be problematic. And our government needs to be getting ahead of this and really starting to deal with the fact that we're going to be running out. And it's not that we're going to be completely running out of oil, but as soon as you reach peak oil is sort of the halfway point to where you've used up half of your easily accessible cheap oil. And after that, supplies, they call it terminal decline. You start terminally declining downward. And as that happens, I mean, you still have demand going up from China and India, and the U.S. has got this huge demand. Europe uses a whole lot. And you have all this demand and a declining supply. The problem is the price. The price goes through the roof when you have all these countries wanting a resource that's becoming less and less. And
not only does the price skyrocket, but then the demand for natural gas and coal also skyrockets. I heard a statistic that we have about a 60-year supply of natural gas at current consumption levels, which are inevitably going to change. We have something like 200-year supply of coal, but coal is the dirtiest form of fossil fuel that we have. And as we run out of oil, we're naturally going to transition. If we don't do something to develop renewable energy, we're going to transition to natural gas first. We'll destroy that supply, and then coal, and we'll be polluting our world and our own health even faster. And
my hope is that we'll get smart and try to, solar will be the focus. I'm really hoping for an enlightenment here in America. I've just got my fingers crossed. Maybe.
That's why we're doing this show.
Yeah. Hopefully people will pay attention.
Raising consciousness.
Raising consciousness. Some people talk about this consciousness shift coming. I don't know. Second coming. I don't know. I wish maybe love is going to come back. But anyway, what else? Let's see. Do you have anything else to say? Anybody? I don't know.
Well, I think we should talk about, we've talked a lot about the problems with our fossil fuel based conventional agriculture, but we haven't talked about the alternatives to that.
Right.
Yeah, I think if we could, I was prepared for some of the other impacts on our soil and water.
Well, I mean, if you had something to say about the alternatives.
Go ahead, Jacob, before
go
there's
ahead.
lots to talk about alternatives, so please, go ahead.
I mean, what I've been reading lately is that organic agriculture has been, in the past 20 years, has basically caught up with conventional ag, and this is something that isn't supported by our government policies, so we haven't really had a chance to test it out. A lot of organic agricultural operations aren't getting the huge subsidies, like the the other operations are. And it's hard to be competitive in that type of environment, And we wonder why our organic agricultural products cost so much more. Well, they're not getting, certification is one of them, which is, it's more than that on some respects. I mean, it is still catching up, but I mean, the point is we're going to have to change our lifestyle, the way we eat, the way we commute, the way we do everything.
That's
when oil runs out, we have to change our lifestyle.
And we don't